Good evening, everyone. We are running a little bit behind. Give me 1 more minute to set up. I will be with you guys shortly. Hello, everyone. All right, we're gonna do a little bit of sound check. Who cannot hear the croaking that's coming out of my computer? Called me. Let's see who can hear me or not. Is my sound coming through?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can? Awesome. Okay. All right. So awesome. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you everyone for being here. So get the elephant out of the room. Oh gosh, did I just lose Bibi? Oh, here you go. I'm either gonna sound like a princess, a frog, or a princess that swallowed a frog. Um and y'all are gonna bear with me. Let me admit these people in. Not sure what that request was. All right. It's 8:07. I did hop on like 2 minutes late, Bibi. Do you think we should start? And you are muted.
I think we should.
Okay. All right. Hello. It's Asset Management Mondays. Welcome, everyone. We have another educational series in store for you. I see some familiar names, familiar faces, and some not so familiar names. So is there anyone that's coming on here for Asset Management Mondays? Is this your first time? Yes, no, everyone's family, everyone's been here. Yay, nay, okay. All right. Well, let me get the slides up. One second. My sharing. Oh, I have to stop sharing. There we go. Now it's making sense. All right. Awesome. So today on our asset management series, we'll be talking about communication. Perfect timing for my voice to sound the way it sounds, because if I can communicate to you guys in some way effectively, then I guess Bibi and I did a good job. That'll be the test. So we're talking about effective communication in asset management tonight. And if the reason I was asking if this was anyone's first time, if this is anyone's first time, this is the Multifamily Freedom Chasers community. And it's a collaborative Zoom. We would love for you to participate. Raise your hand, ask questions in the chat. If anyone has any questions, you don't need to wait for either Bibi and I to either call on you, or you can, you can always answer. This is a judgment-free zone. There's no question that's too silly except the one that's not asked, right? So this series is run every other Monday by Bibi and I. For those who may or may not know us, Bibi is based in Dallas. I'm based in Massachusetts. We're partnered on a couple of deals. She comes in with over a decade of asset management experience. She's the COO of Blue Ocean Equity. And this is our contact information for anyone who'd like to connect with us through Instagram, through email. Would love to hear from you. Alrighty. What we're talking about today is communication. This is just, a slide that we show you each time to show you how far we've come. So we're on week 6, believe it or not. And in between all of that, we had a Q&A session. So it's technically 7-ish weeks we've been doing this every other Monday. So let's dive in. All right. So the hope is that by the end of this session, again, ask questions, but the hope is that folks will walk away with a better understanding of how important it is to effectively communicate with 3 key people, 3 key populations in your commercial multifamily deal: your property manager, the investors, as well as the lenders. That's something that isn't really talked about. All right. So, talking with the property manager. When we think about communicating with the property manager, a couple of things come to mind, right? How do we do it? How do we do it? What kind of style, do you use? The expectation is, and I'm sure every property manager would agree, that you should be professional. You should be courteous. I know that as asset managers, we are managing the manager, but there shouldn't be any element of, you looking down on them in any way, shape, or form. It should be in depth, You should provide enough information, because once information is a little bit scarce or scanty, it leads to an increased risk of, confusion, causing confusion. I said, he said, I thought, she thought, and assumptions, and that leads to mismatched expectations. The messaging should be clear, should be crystal clear as well. We communicate to our property managers through a variety of means. None is wrong, and you can use, and you should use, all of them at some point. Email. Email is key. It helps with documenting things. Document. Um, in my world, it said if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. So there's certain things that should go in email. I don't think it's every single communication has to be done via email, but there's certain things that should be certain directives, certain decisions should be arrived at and consolidated through an email or some written form. Communicating in person as well. It's easy. Again, email is great. You can document everything through email, but you can also hide behind a computer screen. And so being in person, or I know sometimes, especially if you're doing this remote, you may resort to Zooms or some form of video conferencing, but being able to pay attention to the person's other language, which is body language, can be key. And you can only do that if you're speaking in person. And then phone, get on the phone. There are times when the emails become lengthy, the text messages become lengthy, and it's time to seek clarification. And you really should be hopping on the phone and getting certain things ironed out. If something is needed urgently, it's an emergency, a boiler broke, something needs to be replaced, that might not be the time for email. Or that might not be the time to say, oh, I'll just wait till I see them in person. Pick up the phone. And again, this goes both ways, from asset manager to property manager and the other way around. But the expectation is if there's something that requires a sense of urgency, then by all means pick up the phone. And then if you use it, another beauty about, speaking on the phone is no matter how clear we think we might be in email, in text, there's always the possibility that intent could be lost, right? And so sometimes clarifying things or resolving conflicts can only happen over the phone. I don't know if you have anything. Oops, sorry about that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Bibi.
If you've said you said a lot. I just want to emphasize more on the in-person aspect you discussed. For example, I went to one of our property management location, and what I did was to sit down for hours, and they didn't know what I was doing. I was just observing their body language, observing their operations. That was a communication for me. And after that, I was able to interpret some things. And what was my interpretation? I got to understand that, one, they had turned the office to a townhouse. So it's a place where the maintenance person is, when it's just a little free, comes in and they start gisting. I noticed that. They turned the place also to a relaxation center. When there's nobody there, they are either eating or doing something. I didn't say a single word, I was just observing. And the last thing I found out was their conflict resolution amongst the tenants was poorly managed. So those are in-person communication that you should have. You can't see all these things on the phone. And sometimes you can also study your property management and body language to know how to approach something. Like if you remember when I was telling you that I know one of our property management representative, I think I'm getting to her here. Yes, and it was based on body language. I got to know that there. And the reason is because I decided I was going to do my job and all that. So body language helps you understand some things and helps you make some corrections if you are able to understand those things. So Zoom calls is not just enough. If you have boots on ground, you should go there. Sometimes just observe things and give, afterwards, you can now call for a meeting and say, this is what I noticed and I want this changed. And that was exactly what we did. After that visitation, I went back the next week. I said, this was my observation. That needs to change. It's not going to happen again, and all that. So over to you, Ify.
Alrighty, awesome. Thank you. All right. So we're still on communicating with the property manager. The question always comes, well, how often? How often am I going to be a pest? I don't know that there's a singular answer. I think it depends. Uh, on our team, we have standing weekly meetings with our property manager. Does that mean that we leave every single thing to be discussed only one day a week? No, if you do that, you're going to run the risk of missing key things. Again, remember, emergencies do happen. Some things need to be addressed before that 7-day period is up. So you could find that you are communicating once a week only at some point, but you may have to communicate every single day. For instance, what if your property is, going to be inspected, etc., by the city? As that's something we're going through as well. Would you just say, well, we'll just talk about it on our weekly call? What if there are things that need to be addressed before that weekly call? So it could be daily, it could be multiple times a day, or it could be multiple times a week, that you would be communicating with them. You do want to have a measure of consistency, right? So remember I said we have these weekly calls. We both, and by we, I mean the asset management team and the, excuse me, the property management team, we have that understanding that we have a standing weekly call. So worst case scenario, we will always have that standing weekly call. What you don't want to do is say, well, I'll talk to you today, this week it'll be Monday, next week is Tuesday, another day is Wednesday afternoon. Then, hey, do you have any availability on Saturday morning? That just doesn't work. So you want to inject some measure of consistency in there. And then again, going back to frequency, you don't want to go, well, if they're doing such a great job, I really don't want to bother them. Yeah, why don't we just meet once a month, and then be a hands-off operator. Bibi, wasn't there, maybe I'm making this up. Was there an asset you were looking at and the owners were remote? And I think that was probably resulting in why the asset was being sold, because they were hands off and it was time to take it off their hands. Let me put it that way.
Exactly. You got that right. Yes.
Okay. All right. So next.
Sorry,
Oh,
before you flip,
yeah.
I just want to say something. At the point, yes, this. Remember we discussed about your contract and agreement when you are sourcing for your property management personnel. During the period when you are trying to conclude on your contract and agreement with your property management company, this is the time you need to discuss your communication. Because if you're supposed to give them this example, because remember when we had a meeting with one of the property management company that we wanted to work with, and we wanted them to meet with us weekly, and they told us no, it was going to be once a month. So these are things you need to clarify from the beginning of sourcing your property management company. If they fit into your plan, your business plan, if they can meet once a week, then that might be a sign that you can't work with those people, because you can't.
It was a deal breaker for them.
It was a deal breaker. Yes, it was big one, and for us too, it was, because there was no way we're going to be meeting monthly for a new deal. No.
Correct. Many moving parts. Yeah, no, it did make sense. So that, and I don't know if that's typical with larger property management companies, or if we would have still gotten the same thing if we went with a less institutionalized one, but
No, it has to do with just the property management
their
company.
style.
Yes, it depends on
Their process.
their process.
Yeah. Okay. So the next the next class of individuals, so to speak, that we also communicate with are the investors. All right. So because I sound like a frog-ish, I'm going to ask you these questions, and this is where I want people to participate. I stopped sharing, right? I was supposed to stop sharing. So I'm gonna ask the audience, I'm asking the room, when it comes to, because I'm pretty sure all of us are either investors, you've talked to investors, you know an investor, or you want to talk to an investor at some point. So as an asset manager, when it comes to communicating to investors, new, potential, old, I guess the question is, when do you start talking to them? Don't let me pick on you guys, because now I know your name. We've been here for like 6 weeks. I'm gonna be like one of those teachers that points out and says, "Hey, you answer." Well, Daryl says now. Yeah, Daryl, let me ask you. Do you communicate now because you have a deal, or do you communicate regardless of whether you have a deal or not? And we kind of touched on this yesterday, right? With Keely. So great. Yeah. So regardless, without a deal. Okay, great. So then the next question is, what do we say? So let's say we do have a deal. An investor has signed on to your deal. Then what? What are you telling them after that? Let me try and pull up the chat. Okay, so Linda says before and all the time. Okay, great. So we now have a deal. They've invested in your deal. What you're telling them. And I think people can unmute. And oh, cool. So Linda says updates on the progress or lack thereof. What else? What else should we be telling our investors? Okay. How much information should we share with our investors? And again, put yourself in this in the driver's seat of, if I were an investor, how much do I want to know or not? Or how much have you guys told your investors? All right, nobody on this group is talking to their investors. That is a big, big problem.
Said everything.
Daniel says everything. So along the lines of everything, Daniel, is there a thing in terms of in the investor relations world? Is there such a thing as over communication, oversharing? Masha says, the consistency of payouts. Carrie says, why I like the deal. Is there a concept such as over communicating when it comes to investors? Is it possible to overshare? Everybody's saying no now.
I'm gonna say yes, right? There's
Okay.
there's certain things you want to keep internal, right? This is how to bake the cake. Then you want to communicate, everything that's related that may impact their investment, which, is anything from unexpected expenses, anything that's going to derail you from the business plan and the projections that you've made. I think you need to communicate that. That's just my opinion. That's the guidance I use.
Right. So if things are going right and if things are going wrong, thank you, Fred, for sharing that. And that's true. Very key thing that we have to remember is, if especially with syndications, right? Investors represent a very large percentage of the equity, and as general partners, we have that duty to keep them informed. We're not supposed to keep them in the dark. They're supposed to be carried along. And just like Fred talked about, if there are delays, if there are changes, for instance, with your lending terms and lending agreements, so things that might impact the deal, because as much as we may not want to admit it, as much as we may not want to accept this fact, up until the time you close and cross that finish line, they have the right to request their money back. If the terms have changed from what you originally presented, they don't have to agree to it. They don't have to accept it. They can opt out. And so I think it's key to keep our investors abreast of all the information of everything that's going on. And I think that some of the examples we've had, the true life examples we've had of deals going, belly up, a couple of them started off with the operators keeping the investors either in the dark or with one or two light bulbs on. They knew something was up, but they didn't know the details. They knew something was up, but they didn't know the extent to how bad things were. Bibi, as an investor, so take your asset management hat off. Have you been an LP in a deal or deals where I'm just asking, have you been an LP in a deal where things haven't gone as well as they could have, and where the operators open upfront with information? Did you like it? Did it annoy you? Did you not care? How did you what was your experience like? Let me put it that way.
Okay, as an LP, I'm invested in some deals, and one of them is currently going south. And the reason why I'm a little calm about it is because of the consistency of the communication. One thing they've done best is right from when the issue started, they informed us. We knew there were challenges. And part of the issues were from the city. They came up, I think the city slammed them with a lot of violations and all that, which they didn't see before they closed. And in order for them to do it, they're going to come up with a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. So when those things happened, they informed us. And since that time, it's been consistent. So we are upset, but we are also not upset because we are aware. And they've been telling us, today they sent us an update. And in that update, it was about 33 pages reports. In that report, it was everything. So there's really no reason for you to say you don't know or you don't know what's going on. Everything is there, white and black, it's there. And that's why I'm calm and patient with them. But another one I am on, there's no payouts, there's no communication. Why? The communication is slow. Sometimes it's not consistent. Sometimes they don't send it monthly. Sometimes they miss 1 month, they send the other month. And they are not giving us distributions, and nobody's telling us why. No form of communication to say, okay, we are not going to give distributions because of so reason. Nothing of such has happened to date. And I've invested in that deal more than a year now. So this is the reality of what some LPs go through.
So let me ask you, because I know you remember a deal that I almost LP'd into last year, right? And they ended up never closing. And I don't think they disclosed why. I don't think they were very upfront or very forthcoming with information to potential investors who started asking for their money back when they stopped hearing anything. The deal that you're on, where there isn't much communication before they closed, were they always communicating? In other words, maybe as we go along, it's kind of like a sniff test for investors or for us when we're potential LPs. If they're not communicating prior to closing, well, they've shown us who they are. They're not going to communicate after they close.
Yes. Funny enough, these ones were really communicating before closing. And the thing was to get us to the finish line. They really wanted our money. So, but after we closed, it's now like a dead zone. Nobody's hearing things like that,
So we have a question from Marsha, and she's asking, what do you do as an investor if there's such inconsistency in communication, no distributions against the original promise? I guess, I mean, you can answer that as well, Bibi. What I probably would do, that's not the case in the one I'm invested in, but I certainly would be reaching out to the person who brought me into the deal. I certainly would be, and if the person that brought me to the deal is a GP and not the sponsor, I would do all I can to get in touch with the sponsor. That's what I encouraged people who were invested in that other deal, the one that never closed. I asked them they were asked to reach out to the sponsor, and I encouraged one of them to reach out to the sponsor to get their money back. I don't know if you have any other tips. Yeah. what we're not going to tell you on this Zoom is go call the SEC, blow the whistle. No, I'm not going to go that far, but apart from just, reaching out persistently rather, do you have any other tips that you can share?
Yes, one of the things I would do if I'm not getting my constant communication is I would have made up my mind I will never invest with them. So there's not going to be a return customer again. So that's the done deal. That's one. Secondly, if they are not, there's something I also want to put out there. Deals not giving out distributions might not directly be their fault. It might just be an issue for a period that they need to sort out and start giving distributions. Now, the problem is not even not giving out the distribution. The problem is the communication, which we are discussing about. If GP, like an asset team like us, can come to the LPs and explain things to them on a consistent basis with proof that this was not what we envisaged, these things happened, but this is our plan to mitigate this kind of issue and all that, I believe every reasonable limited partner would support them and be patient. But in the case whereby you are not communicating, that is where the problem is. There's really no, if this other group were paying us, I'm not sure, I mean, they're not paying, right now they're not paying for over a year and no form of explanation. But if they were communicating consistently, I'm not sure I'll be upset. Versus the other one that is the deal is going south, right? But they're communicating and I'm not even upset. I laugh over it when I look at it. I just laugh, because they're communicating. I know what's going on. Right now, they are selling the property, which is good for us, at least to get back our initial investment. But these are real life scenarios. Marsha, you asked a beautiful question.
Yes, that's another one. My answer to that is no, about AI interfering with the live communication with the lead sponsor or the investor relations person.
Yeah, I can clarify that, because maybe it's just that I experienced this and I don't know if you guys have this issue. So I'm invested in a deal where the operation is amazing and we do get our distributions, but I had a question because we're supposed to submit to custodians certain documentation by the end of the year. And I was just unclear about something. So when you reach out, the operation of this particular deal is so automated now. Everything is going through AI, and you can see it. Like, there is no doubt, every single communication is generated via chat GPT, its extensions, its enhancements. You have it, like a zillion of options, and I see that happening, which is exciting, and it helps in many instances, in most of them. But when you try to reach out to a live person to ask a simple question, it's virtually impossible, it seems, because you're shielded now by this AI wall. And I don't even know if I write to an email from which I'm receiving some communication consistently, if that's actually reaching anyone on the other end. Because I know the management group is pretty small. There are a couple of people and they're extremely efficient in what they do. Nothing bad to be said, but still, if you want your question answered, I don't know if you guys experienced any of that. And I'm wondering if that's the future, and that's a little scary because, like, what are you going to do if there is no one live on the other end?
Ify, let me chime in into this. There was one webinar I went for today, and we're talking about AI for investors relations, for communication. And I sat there and I was amazed because what they're using AI to do right now is going to make it look like, in short, there's really no need for investors relations, because the ChatGPT 0.4 can virtually do everything, even from creating the presentation to wording it. You just need to insert the word and it will give you everything you need. And I'm like, this is just computer on its own. There's no need for anybody at the back end. Now, the issue is there needs to be a balance. We need this, while we're having this conversation is we're trying to say, point out the negatives and also point out the positive. AI is a very fantastic new software tool that everybody should be using. But when you take out the human part of it, then that becomes an issue because you can't express emotions, you can't express some kind of, there's a way you want to say things to your investors, there's a way you want to reach out to them, but when you're using AI to completely do those things, then that becomes a problem. Now, the thing is, how do we create the balance? We can now put in the human part of it in between those AI wordings and all that, and don't just, because these people have invested significant amount of money to your deals, you can't assign them to AI. But did you use AI to get them to invest with you? You didn't do that. Since you didn't use AI to get them to invest with you, then it's important that you owe them that responsibility of communicating with them. That is why on our team, we have a particular team of people that are in charge of investors relations. And that is their role. Irrespective of if they want to use any application, software or not, they still put the human part of it in it, the emotions, everything that you can think about, they put it in it. And if she's the lead in that, and definitely if you see her write-ups, you know that this comes from, she uses some app to do some things, but you see the human part of it when she's done. And that's what the investors really want to see. Sincerity, clarity.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I don't know if they used AI from the get-go. If they didn't, when you first invested with them, if you're able to still lay your hands on, excuse me, the original webinars where they may have said, oh, contact us at a blah 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 at gmail.com, or we're going to turn to ai.com. Maybe you can still find a way of getting in touch with one of the original emails of the sponsors or the lead team. Don't be afraid to use social media. Find them and send them a direct message on social media. Hey, I've been trying to get in touch, and just keep blasting.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's not an issue. I mean, I can track them down as hard as one can. It's just I'm curious because it seems to be an issue in general if someone tries to automate impossible and then the human aspect of it disappears, and it's just a little unsettling to say the least.
Of course. All right, let's get back to this. Thank you, Masha. Thank you for your input there. All right, so how do we communicate to our investors? What kind of style do we use? Your style might depend on who your audience is. Some operators only accept accredited investors. They expect them to have a certain skill set or knowledge set. They've invested this amount of time and in pouring out basic information to their investors. You could have an investor base that they're repeat investors. They've done this over and over and over again, versus your mom or your aunts, and this is their first time and they've never done this before and they're really worried, and this is their last $50,000 that they're about to put into the investment. The your style, again, the keyword is might, and I put might because if we have a potpourri of investors in a deal, you have a lot of accredited investors, people who are repeats, people who are also investors themselves, they're in the real estate game themselves, and you have them in the same investor pool with sophisticated investors who are getting in on their very first deal. And this is something we actually struggled with when we were about to start off a newsletter. How technical is the information that you're presenting to them? Again, no shade on little old grandma, but let's say you do have lots of little old grandmas in there, and you're giving them all this technical information. is the intent to give it to them, because that's your role, knowing fully well that they're not going to understand it? Should you dumb things down, for lack of better words, for them at the expense or at the cost of losing your repeat accredited investors who are expecting detailed financial reports? So those are things you have to think about. How, we talked about, over communicating or not. Is it possible to over communicate? But when you're sending out those newsletters, or you're creating a webinar, etc., just how much information are you going to put in there? Are you going to tell them about every single eviction that happened and the story behind it? Or are you going to be high level in that department? Whatever content you choose, you want to be clear. You don't want to be ambiguous. And you never, from the beginning with investors all the way to the end, you project. You never make promises. And then the last point I want to make on this is sometimes, remember how Fred was talking about information that may not be too pleasant. You hit a speed bump in the journey. Bibi talked about a deal that she's on that isn't going too well, but she's laughing about it. But guess what? She's an accredited investor. She's been in this game. She's an investor herself. So the way she interprets that sort of information might be different from the way a general sophisticated investor might be able to interpret it. So delivery style is crucial, because sometimes it's not about what you're saying, it's about how you're saying it. So delivery style is key. All right, next. How frequently do we speak or communicate with our investors? Do we bombard them with information until they turn us off? Do they mute us? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? And the answer, just like with the property managers, is depends on what's going on. So at the very minimum, you want to have some form of consistency in the information that you're sharing. If you are going to be creating a monthly newsletter, then create a monthly newsletter. Let the investors know to expect a monthly newsletter. Some people do a monthly newsletter and they inject a quarterly webinar where the information flow is no longer unidirectional. The investors have an opportunity to interact with the investors. I'm beginning to think, Masha, I don't know if your deal has the ability to do that, where they have these webinars, where live webinars, not pre-recorded webinars, where the investors can now interact with the sponsors. What's the mode of communication? Could be an email, depends on what it is. Again, remember, we could be telling them that the loan terms have changed, or congratulations, we closed on our deal. It could be a newsletter, it could be a webinar. And some people don't do any of this, they just pick up the phone. We have a capital raiser, I've heard, and I think I've heard him speak to this. He raises through text messages. He just texts a couple of people and he's able to raise millions of dollars. Of course, he's operating at a very high level there, but it doesn't have to be automation, but consistency must be there. You don't want to keep them in the dark. And then timing is key. You don't want to wait 5 months after you've not given them a distribution, if you have a genuine reason to not do so, and then at that point you tell them, oh, sorry, we're not able to come up with a distribution. So timing is key as to when you also provide this info. Just threw in a sample of a newsletter. This is the first page, I think, of 2 or 3. This is something we put together. There is no official template, right? Some people do email, some people use MailChimp. Some just, I guess, put together PowerPoints and email that out, and that's sufficient. As long as the information, the key crucial information that the investor needs to know about this asset is contained. It would be nice if it looked pretty. So if you could pretty it up, sure. But if your investors don't care, then don't bother.
Hey,
All right.
If I may,
Yes.
chime in, I mean, the sample you had was great. As an LP or just as an investor in general, I'm always looking for, that while you present the numbers, that's great. I always look for a couple of key words like we're on plan to the strategic business plan, or we're slightly off, we're going to make it up or whatever. Something that tells me that when the numbers were projected for the returns, they were based on a certain business plan. And as we progress, I always look for those key words. We're on plan, or we're slightly off, but we expect to get back on plan by this day, by whatever, right? That's what I look for. While the numbers are all good, the question always is, how is that relative to the business plan? Are you ahead of the business plan, on the business plan, or behind the business plan? That to me is key. That's really what I look for. If that makes sense.
No, it does. Thank you, Fred. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to go to communication with the lender. And I'm going to hand it over to Bibi, but before I do that, Bibi Bibi once asked me to communicate something to the lender. And I was like, I'm sorry, what now? Oh, I didn't tell her that, but I was like, what now? What was that? So guys, what's a covenant? Because that is one of the things that you will be communicating to your lender. We'll go over an overview of all the things, but just wanted to ask you guys, what do you think in multifamily a covenant is? Is it a legally binding document that all general partners must enter, promising to never dissolve the partnership? Right, Bibi, like with blood and everything. We like make this blood agreements, or is it a promise by the borrower to abide by certain terms and conditions outlined in the loan agreement? Is it something that sounds, for lack of a better word, sus or religious? Or is a covenant, are you just guys like, not sure. I'm also not sure this has anything to do with asset management. Please move on. So what do you guys think a covenant is?
I'm saying B.
Really? Oh, thought I was gonna make it really hard. So just a general overview before Bibi takes over. What do we communicate with the lender? The expectation is that we are going to be just, it's the same thing. We're going to be timely. We're going to be professional. We're also going to be friendly. They are on our team. They're not our enemy. They're not the bad guys. They're trying to ensure that the business plan works. They're not interested in taking the asset back. They just want us to abide by certain rules. And our communication has to be constant, has to be consistent as well. The worst thing we can ever do is to leave them in the dark, especially if things are going south. Just forget about them and just, you're just doing your thing and you're hustling and you're struggling. You do not want to do that. And so we're going to go over what exactly is being communicated with the lender. We just went over what a covenant is, escrow balance, CapEx draws and extensions. And so let me advance the slides for you, Bibi, and you can take over.
Yeah, please take it back to the other slide.
This one?
Yes. So one of the people on our team that we owe a large communication to is the lender. And don't forget, they give you the highest, in short, they are the highest shareholders in the sense that most of our deals are 70%, 75%. That's a large chunk of your deal. And we need to learn to treat them as that because they own a large amount of that. One thing I typically do with my lenders, or the ones that have helped us in crossing over to the finish line, is I keep a friendly relationship with them. And it's not just because of the current deal that we are on with them. I do that for other deals that are going to come in the future. Because at that point, because we are now friendly, there are some things they can waive. It's okay, we know these people. They are very transparent. They are this. They can waive some things, some requirements that is not really, it's not really a priority for them. So I keep that very close contact relationship with them. It's very important, and people should learn to treat them as if they own, not as if they really own that property. So at the period before you close your deal, there are some things that will happen between you and the lender. And what are those things? The lender will come up with some terms. Not just that, the lender will send some of their representatives to your property. And what are they doing? They are doing a random inspection. Sometimes they tell you, they'll tell you the number of units they want to see. Sometimes they'll tell you they want to walk into the property randomly. And what are they doing? They're picking up some things that are like an issue for you to repair. So they'll walk into those units that you own, they will walk around the exterior and all that. And after that, they come up with a CapEx and project for you and give you a timeline to do it. And those things are included in the closing terms. Before now, when I initially started, the loan docs is always a lot. And that scares me. That used to scare me then because it's too much for me to read and all that. So I just read the first 2 pages and I'm done until something happened. We had a deal. It was a small deal. It was a 16-unit property. And in that deal, 2 weeks before we closed, we lost some vacancies. So the lender knew about that because it was 100% occupied. And when we were about to close, I think we lost more than 2. So the lender withheld 20,000 from us, 10 or 20,000 from us. But because we did not read the document properly, we didn't know that the lender was withholding some amount with us. And the condition was until you get to full occupancy or one particular level of occupancy, then you can request for your money. We had no clue. So that money was there sitting with the lender and we're moving about with our business until one day our broker went to the bank to do his normal transaction and they just kept chatting and it was like, oh, those are your clients, how is the property doing? And he was like, oh, yes, the property is doing well. We are 100%, we are full. I was like, wow, since when? He said, for like 3 months, we've been full. And he was like, don't they know they have money with us? And immediately they called us and I was like, oh, wow. I had to go back to the contract. I saw it. I was like, oh my God, really? I had to request for that money and they transferred it to us. That is a good story. What about the one where they keep things in your loan docs and you did not read it and you violated the terms? Because these things happen. The loan doc is a lot, but it's important that you take your time to read it, go through it. You can scan through it, but when you see a period, a pattern, they put covenant or hurdles, pause there and take a look at what you're signing. Because there are some conditions that you need to meet at some particular time. And if you don't get to meet them, then you're in violation. And whatever that is, it can cost you a lot to rectify. So it's important that you go through your what do you call it, your loan docs before signing and after you sign. It might be overwhelming for you to keep tab on it. That's why you should have someone on your team that should be on that should always be on top of it, because these things have timelines. They give you timing, 3 months, 2 weeks, 6 months, 1 year, and it's consistent. Sometimes it's consistent throughout the maybe for the next 2 years. Imagine after that deal, you're going to another deal, you're going to another deal. You might not remember the terms or the hurdles or the covenant for the deal you did 2 years ago or something. So somebody should be on top of that. So we're going to show you an example of different scenarios of hurdles or covenants that we've seen in our loan docs and the timing that we need to communicate with our lenders, because these are forms of communication that we need to give to our lenders. And also, another form of communication is you need to always find out if your escrow balance is enough to pay up your insurance and your what do you call it, your insurance and your taxes. Because if you do not, the lender will force you to raise that money, and that will eat up from your income. That you have to take it from your income to augment. So these are things you need to constantly watch. So how do we go about checking up our escrow balance? There's an account we have with our lenders. So in that account, we have the access to see our statements, and we also see our reserve balance. We also see our escrow balance. So somebody on your team needs to be checking it out and comparing to reality with this, and project in the next 5 months, if we keep at this level, are we going to save up for are we going to be able to pay off our insurance or our taxes? So someone should be on your team doing that. So the next one is CapEx draws and or extensions. Now, this was what I told you, that before you close, the lender will come down and inspect the property, and if there is any need for repairs, they're going to come up with a CapEx request. At that point, you do it. They will withhold some money at closing for you to do those repairs. It can be 500, it can be 400, it can be 20,000, it can be $1 million, depending on the level of repair. We see this happening mostly on those value add properties that really need that's taking a lot of beatings, properties that really need improvement. Yes, things like this, the lender can, or properties that have deferred maintenance, like the roof is bad, things that can endanger that property. Don't forget, like I said, they own a large stake in the purchase of that property, so they want to ensure that everything is right and all that. So the thing you need to do is, once they give you that CapEx project, they put a time into it. Now, the communication you need to have with them is, sometimes you might not be able to meet up. Like we had a timing for 2 weeks to meet up some items, and we are not able to meet up. We had to call the lender, and we had a Zoom call with that lender, and we're telling them that based on this, we are not sure we can meet up. And they're like, oh, no problem, just request. So that is the importance of communication. Imagine if we were just folding our hands and we're not communicating with the lender to tell them we're having issues and all that. How do you think we would have been able to scale through? Rather, would have been in default. And because we knew we were able to communicate, they gave us an extension for 6 months. And so we had that, and currently we are 3 or 4 months in that and all that. So let's move to the next.
I have a question, Bibi. So just to make sure that we're all on the same, everybody's on the same page, all 20 something of us. These things in the loan docs, they are not the fine print. They are like, bam, part of the main document. It's not some teeny tiny fine print that, oh, I missed it, oh my goodness, it's couldn't see. Okay. And then the covenant.
But sometimes they are scattered around. They can be in between 3 pages, 4 pages. You just keep seeing them like that. So it's important you just read, at least read through. Try your best. Just go through it.
Are these terms, these conditions, are these things that can be what's the word, negotiated, or the minute the lender gives it to you, it's like, dang it?
That is why we said this topic is effective communication. There's communication can change many things for you. Yes, they've asked you to do this, but things might have happened. Like in a case whereby, for example, they asked you to do, don't forget, doing the CapEx project that you're doing for the lender, don't forget you're using your money to do it. There's no, they would have withheld that money from you, but you now have to use your personal money, like maybe from your income or whatever. Or if you have a CapEx reserve somewhere you raised from your limited partners, that's the funds you'll be using for it. But what if you have done a lot, like if let's say the project was 700 and you've already spent 500, and what do you need to do to collect that 500 so that you can continue? Because 500 from a deal is a lot of money to spend and not to have it replaced immediately. So there's a timing to it. You can quickly request for your lender to come and do some inspections and approve, then you can now get your withdrawal. These things are timing, and it can wreck you if you don't do it on time. It happened to us. The good thing about it was that we had the entire money to fund the deal, and it was not going to affect us. So what we did was we finished the entire CapEx, and we asked for the money. After we finished, there's another one we were asking instrumentally. When we know we're about approaching the end of a stage, we quickly call. We are here. They'll send us, send this, send that, send that. We'll send it so that we can meet up the timing, because sometimes it takes them 3 weeks to come down and do the inspection. That 3 weeks, if you don't have money, you're almost dead. You know, so these things are effective communication. You need to keep communicating with them.
Okay.
Very important.
I think we're going to see some of the things that.
Yes. So this is an example of some of the items we've seen in our loan docs. If you look at it, the lender was telling us that in year 1, we should keep at least 1:1. That's a DSCR, meaning that at least, even if you're not profiting, you should break even in year 1. That's what they are telling you. In a case whereby you are 0.89%, that means you've not met their requirement, and it might request, they might now request for you to put down extra reserves in order to augment for that. So things like this, you need to take note of it, and this will help your performance, and this will help you take very good decisions, in the sense that if there are items that they are not priority on your deals, they will not kill you, like maybe advertisements or items like general admin, things you need to cut down on to make your NOI get to at least 1.1. 1:1, that's your DSCR, that's a break even. If you need to do that, these are the things you need to do if you have a requirement that you must meet this, especially when your deal is not stable. So while you're operating your deal, you also need to look at the lender's requirements to be sure that is there. So these are part of the items that you see, and there's a part that says replacement reserves equal to 5% of gross rent. That means the lender wants to always have 5% of your gross rent. The full one is every quarter. So in a slide, you'll see that they requested that every quarter you must have deposit 5% of your gross rent. Let's assume you're not doing it. That means you're in violation of what they asked you to do, and they can call up or whatever. You need to read the conditions and know what are the implications of you not abiding to their terms. And all that. So next slide, Ify. So this is another one. They gave us step by step. Year 1, we want you to be at DSCR of 1:1. That means break even. Year 2, at least make 15% profit. That's a 1.15:1%. The other one is 125:1%. So if you know this thing, this will help you be a better operator, because at this point you are making a decision to say, I need my property to meet the lender's requirements. I need my property to be this and that. One thing we always do is we communicate frequently with our lenders, like quarterly, every 6 months. I send them the rent roll. I send them the, it's not things you should do, but I do that. I send them maybe the pre-lease. I just want to tell them this is how we are performing, and just keeps them abreast and calm and all that. In that way, if I call them for another deal, they are going to answer me, because they know that we are very transparent and we know what we are doing. So the next slide. So here, they also told us that we need to create a 6-month reserve of 396,542 and all that. We did not upload the last one. There's one out. Okay, I think it's the next one, Ify.
This one, CapEx.
Yes. Okay. So the lender walked through our property and came up with this CapEx repairs and gave us timing. If you look at the timing, you see 60 days, 6 days. I mean, 6 months, 6 months, 12 months, and all that. But for this, we were not able to No, for this one, we're not able to meet up, and we called them. We told them about it, and they said if we need more extension, we should ask them. So effective communication is very important when you are doing your CapEx project. If you're having any issues, another issue we had with this was that they asked us to do this, but the location itself would not permit for this. It would cost us thousands of dollars to do this, whereas they budgeted peanuts. They budgeted $3,000, whereas it was going to cost us about 20-something thousand. So we had to call them to tell them, did they estimate these things very well? Because the market price for this is relatively high. So it was in that way we jumped on another Zoom call, and they said, okay, do it this way. That is the importance of effective communication. They gave us this, but the reality on ground meant that we cannot fulfill this. So they gave us two other options on how to go about it. So communicating with your lenders is very, very important. It will help you go through issues that might look very complicated and all that. So now, the next thing I want to discuss about is when they've given you this, how do you request for your money? Because don't forget, they are holding on to a large chunk of money or whatever amount, they are holding on to it until you fulfill their requirements. In that way, once you are done with it, the next thing is for you to request for your draws. Now, the question is, do you have to wait till you finish your entire project before you request for your draws? My advice to you is that no. If you've done a significant, or you've gotten to a milestone that is significant, that you feel that money is tangible, you need to deploy it into something else, you can go ahead and request for it. So in the case whereby you need that money in 3 weeks, you will not wait until 3 weeks before you start asking for it. You have to start asking for it now, because they will need to schedule somebody to come down and inspect if need be. Sometimes they ask you, if it's not a very heavy thing, they can ask you to take pictures and send. But in the case, most times they send an inspector to visit and check all the boxes. These things takes time. So if you need it in 3 weeks, you need to start the process early enough so that your 3 weeks targets will be met and all that. So the first thing you do is request for your draw. So what I typically do is I send an email, I want to request for a draw, or they give me a form. They have a form that is called disbursement request form. So I've done it both ways. I've used a disbursement request form. I've sent an email, I need to request for a form. Sorry, I have cold. The next thing is they will ask you to submit some documents. So whereas you have contractors doing your jobs for you, don't go ahead and start throwing away the invoices or the receipts. These things, without it, you will not collect your money. They need to see those paid invoices that you've paid the contractor, because they don't want somebody coming up to sue them or sue the property or put a lien on the property because you are owing them. Don't forget, they own this property. So they don't want anything to endanger their assets. So they're going to ask you for paid invoices. They're also going to ask you for signed lien waivers. What are signed lien waivers? Signed lien waivers are for your contractor. So your contractor is going to sign and write you off and say, yes, you've paid me. So imagine if you're not in good terms with your contractor, or you're not paying him. What do you think will happen? You will get stopped, you will not collect your money. So relationship is very important. Maintaining a healthy relationship with your contractors is very important, because if they decide not to sign or say that you are owing them, that becomes a challenge. I've been on a deal, really we're owing the contractor, I wouldn't lie to you, but the contractor waived it because he trusted us that we're going to pay. So he signed for us in good faith that we're going to pay him, because we've done businesses with him in the past, that we're going to pay him. And that was what relationship did, because we maintained that good relationship with him. So he signed it off and we're able to hand it over to our tenants. Then plans and permits. If you have plans, or you were able to draw plans or you needed permits to do some rehab constructions, they might ask you for it. It's important that you have these papers and you give it to them. Cancel checks. it's for them to have your exact account details, and they're not going to wire it to the wrong person. So they ask you for a void check for that purpose. Then the next thing for you to do after you've provided this thing takes time. So if you need it in 3 weeks, start asking for it right now. The next thing is schedule the inspections. This one, they'll have to book an appointment and give you a date so they will come and do that. And when they come and do that, they're going to take a book or whatever, and they'll start checking things out. They're going to check to the level you said you've done it up to. And after that, you now receive your funds. It looks pretty straightforward, but not all the time. Like I said, there are cases whereby people, imagine you have to do an heavy lifting. Let's say the roof. Let's say the lender said you should replace the roof. Let's assume that's a very expensive project. It can cost you, depending on the size of the property, maybe somewhere like the property we own. I saw the invoice, it was 400 and something thousand that they use. So imagine a lender asking you to do that within 6 months or 1 year, and you pulling that out from maybe your income and not collecting it as at when due. That can be an issue, because cash flow is the bloodline of any deal. So in as much as you are doing that, you need to also watch it and know when it's time for you to request for your what they call it, for your refunds. I think that's all that I have. Okay, so this is a sample of a disbursement request. This is typically given to you by the lender. So sometimes they give you this, sometimes I type and I'm requesting for a refund. So this is a template of what this looks like. You're just basically asking for a refund. The next slide. So this is a lender gave us this in 2022, gave us a list of how he wants it done. He said, okay, we are currently waiting on inspection reports and found some pending items to complete this. So what happened here was that the inspector came, and they wanted to book for inspection report, and they sent us this that we've not presented this. So that these are the items we need to present it before they proceed in getting the inspector to come down. This thing took us like 2 weeks for them to come down, and another 1 week. So it was like 3 weeks before we got our money and all that. And that might be a long time for some people. So the next one. This is a borrower certification that you've completed the project. So you sign this off and say, I've completed the project. This is an agency loan. You write your name and all that. This is a signing of that the replacement has been completed. After this, they give you your fund. So like I said, it does not have to come at the end. You can do it in milestones. So every milestone you complete, you feel this, I've completed this. Another milestone, you feel this, I've completed this. Wire transfer authorization. I think this is the most important part for me. You know, after filling those forms, I need my money back. This is very important. So you have to send this, authorizing them to do a wire transfer, and they will send it to you. I think this is third-party authorization. This is where your contractors need to sign off that you do not owe them. So you need to maintain good relationship with your contractors. Like I said, even if you are owing them, they can help you sign off, and you can, because of good faith, you can pay them afterwards for some, but try as much as possible, because they can hold you back. Really, they can. Ify, I think that is all for my.
You know what I noticed? You and I both have a cold and we're wearing red. Kind of like we planned it.
Oh my God.
All right, guys, we've come to the end, and I know we ran, a few minutes over. My sincere apologies about that. Does anyone have any quick question about what we talked about? Thank you, Fred. Thank you for coming. Always Next week, the next session we have, I do want to show, let me just share my screen again. I apologize, I took it down too soon. Share my screen. What to expect next time. We are going to be talking about the transaction piece, distributions, and then the implementation of our exit strategy. Do we refinance? Do we stay in? Do we sell? What are the decision makings that go in there? So we will send out, as we've always done, we'll send out notice of when the Zoom is going to be. It's always 8 p.m. And I don't know, Bibi, do you have anything else? No.
Yes, we are going to be bringing along the line during that conversation. We're going to be bringing a special guest to also bless us with his experience in the exit strategy. What were the things he considered before deciding that it's time for us to exit? What was the market condition at that point? And was it profitable? Or did he lose money? Or why was he selling? These are questions we'll be asking him. And these are true life stories and answers. So it's important for every one of us to be present, to see and to hear from people that have done numbers of circles, different circles. Don't forget I said, not all operators that have done full circles are good operators. So one of the persons we are bringing, he has done good number of circles, and in my regard, he has operated them well. But definitely he had some challenges, and he's going to tell us what were challenges at the time of exit and all that. So please stay tuned.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We hope to see you for another Asset Management Monday. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. Don't forget, I keep forgetting to share. So I'm like, don't forget, but I forgot. We have a WhatsApp platform that is available for you guys to join. This is going to be recorded and put on the Multifamily Freedom Chasers YouTube account. It's also streamed on Spotify. Have a great night, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Someone move the WhatsApp. Vicky.
Yeah.
Somebody needs the WhatsApp.
Yeah, I responded to him. I said he should hold on now. I need to find the link.
Please go on. I'm enjoying the song.
Okay.